classified top secret. The names were classified top secret.
We were then descended upon by all the law enforcement of the United States.
We had government agencies from NSA and CIA coming to visit us and find out why the CIA had targeted a group of psychics to go spying on the NSA.
So I didn't know whether to be sick to my stomach or what to do.
So it wasn't just Kit Green, it was the owners of this site. And you know, some of it, like some of the names that I told you, turned out to be accurate. And so, you know, the first concern, a security leak. Somebody has let this information out.
If I was director of intelligence or even the president, and I was briefed on what you just told me about those code words, I would think that this was either a propaganda thing, or I would think that there's a guy who could probably look inside a nuclear missile silo and give me the launch codes. And that guy is really important, and potentially dangerous. It's either a hoax, or it's real.
I know. Now, if you're asking me where I sit, it's in the latter.
You know, what really is going on here? Do we have a counterintelligence issue where people can do this sort of stuff against us? And of course, the other side of it is, hey, can we do it against somebody else?
How would it be if we spent half of our time on operational targets for the CIA and half of our time doing research? And he said, I understand what you want to do, that would be fair.
Everybody knew that there had to be some foundational science or this stuff would never be accepted.
Stanford Research Institute has been conducting an experimental program in the field of psychoenergetic effect.
I had Hal and Russ bring Uri Geller to me, who was supposedly one of the psychokinetic people who could take and bend spoons and do other magic kind of things with materials. And we had an experiment set up.
15 drawings were placed in double-sealed envelopes in a safe for which none of the experimenters had the combination. This is Geller's representation of what he believed was sealed in the envelope. This is the most off-target of the drawings that he did. As you can see, he is quite elated about getting the right answer.
Hey, this is real. Don't you try to debunk this, because it is scientifically proven.
And I can tell you the agency did a little background check on Uri and found that he might be working for some other government, shall we say. And so he was just dropped. There were security concerns.
The worry was that there was national security information that could be gathered.
What he said was that he mushed his head into a safe, and these words popped into his mind. When a CIA analyst reads this and says, what? Does that mean if I have a document on my desk that I consider highly sensitive and classified, that there could be some Russian psychic 1,000 miles away reproducing what I'm looking at?
Suddenly the lights came on, and we had CIA money and fresh support for our research.
I'll be working with you in this 8 weeks, sometime 24 hours a day.
Our CIA handlers warned us to be wary of bugs, phone taps, and even honeypots.
Bring these personal problems to me.
We could see anywhere, and they had unlimited resources to back up our claims. We even had a degree of fame among those in the know. It was like a dream come true.
With new funding and assignments from the CIA, it seemed as if Hal and Russell could do no wrong.
What kind of place do you experience them at?
Attorney General from somewhere in Northern California came to us and said, would you help us with this case? She's been kidnapped.
The heiress had been kidnapped from her Berkeley apartment. As we walked in, the police were very excited, and they said, we have a lot of questions we want to ask you. And Price said, let me show you how we do this. Let me see a mug book. And he put his finger on Donald DeVries. and said, "That's the ringleader." The Berkeley police said, "We know who he is. He walked away from a minimum security prison a year ago."
And he said, you know, this is not your regular kidnapping for money. This is some kind of political thing.
And then she's photographed in robbing banks alongside with an AK-47 or something like that with the other crooks.
I get this image of crosshairs, looking at crosshairs. Well, getting closer, it's more like an intersection.
He told us where the car that they had kidnapped her in had been left.
Across the freeway are two large white gas storage tanks. And one of the detectives said, "Well, I know where that is."
So the policemen went out and they actually found the car where he said.
And we went to a shack they thought might be a hideout. I had the experience of the detective handing me his sidearm and said, "You know how to fire a pistol?" And I said, "I happen to own an automatic." "Yes, I do." So he didn't realize that he handing Mr. Magoo an automatic so that I could cover his back.
Handsome walking stick.
This is the assignment outside my job description.
Continental flavor.
We were basically detectives on the case, on the street, boots on the ground, so to speak.
Problem was that the Berkeley police did not cooperate with the Alameda Sheriff's Department, the county sheriff, and neither of them were cooperating with the FBI.
It was only after the entire thing was resolved we found out that that indeed was the area where she was being kept, and the layout in the apartment was as he described, and in fact she was being kept in the closet.
And we got a formal commendation from the Berkeley Police Department. Unfortunately, a lot of people got killed in the meantime.
They attracted not only fans in law enforcement.
The CIA had gotten hold of Soviet documents in which our names were in there as targets to be tracked and to be turned if possible. That's as I said, well, then we have to take this whole thing very seriously.
And I began to feel frightened. This felt like a penetrating into a dangerous area.
When he died, he was out in Las Vegas.
Medical circumstances would admit to a coronary and would admit to what he said he was suffering from, which was poisoning. Particularly, he said, a food poisoning.
Later on, somebody said, well, you know, the KGB did him in. And I said, oh yeah, I've heard these rumors. You know, I have no reason to believe that.
So this appears to have been a state-sponsored assassination attempt.
Statement of the Prime Minister.
But now, 8 days on, Theresa May came to the Commons. In her hands, one of the most remarkable statements she's delivered as Prime Minister.
It is now clear that Mr. Skripal and his daughter were poisoned with a military-grade nerve agent of a type developed by Russia. This is part of a group of nerve agents known as Novichok.
It causes suffocation and heart failure.
I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, there was a TV program recently, I mean, this was a decade later, where they were interviewing an ex-KGB agent who had been involved with an assassination squad. And the interviewer had asked him, you know, what do you do? How do you carry out assassination? If we had somebody who was a target, we'd find out what their medical profile was, and then we would do something that would cause that medical condition to go south quickly, and then it'd just be assumed it was a medical event, and that way we would be, wouldn't be found out. And so the interviewer, I'm told, I haven't seen this program yet, I haven't been able to find it. The interviewer said, well, did you ever actually use that approach? They said, yeah, once on a psychic who worked for the CIA.
Our husbands and wives.
They really do, for instance, have a Soviet experiment in remote strangulation.
Larissa Velenskaya was put in charge of monitoring SRI's ESP work from Moscow.
Kamensky was in Moscow and Nikolai was in Leningrad. Kamensky imagined that he tried to strangle Nikolai. Nikolai was unaware at all, but he felt that he couldn't breathe. he was on the edge of unconscious state. And suddenly everything disappeared just because Kamensky in Moscow stopped transmit this image.
I do solemnly swear and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution
of the United States.
So help me God.
I got frustrated as I realized I may be trapped in our own success. Everything was now a secret. I couldn't even tell my family. Our phones might be tapped.
The only thing secret about this program, what is it with the secret program? But we weren't publishing anything. We went to the CIA handlers and we said, look, you've got to let us publish some of these experiments. Everyone's beginning to say, well, gee, maybe it's a secret program. So anyway, we got their permission to put together a series of our Bay Area remote viewing experiments and publish them.
They wouldn't let us publish the hot stuff, and they didn't care about the bigger implications of our work. Maybe I had made a deal with the devil.
I said, have them go back and get some more. Well, the obvious thing was to do something on the operational side. So I started searching around for a project that would have some impact. It was a research facility. That was all that we were going to tell them.
So this was our very first #1 Soviet site. Pat Price was the remote viewer in this case. The CIA people came and just gave us coordinates and said, look here.
And so he leans back in his chair, puts his glasses on, and I'm looking at him and I'm saying to myself, why does he put his glasses? He said, I put my glasses on because I can see better remotely when I have my glasses on. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, okay.
We sat down with our coffee and I said, here's the target, Pat. What do you see?
Next morning, they came back with a sketch.
And we showed him the picture.
So I go over and I say, well, I've got this science fiction fantasy crane.
Well, we looked at that and, were quite frankly astounded at the similarities.
And he unrolled a big picture of an R&D facility, and right in the middle of this facility was a photograph of a giant gantry crane.
So the sketch on the left is what Price produced, and this one is the one that is derived from the from the sketch from the photographic image. He said, oh, this was a huge crane. He said, I saw somebody walk by and the guy only came up to the axle or something on the wheels, or up to the top of the wheels. Pat, what do you see about underground?
He said one of the big things they're doing here is making these 60-foot spheres out of steel. They're actually 58 feet.
What I was told was the analysts of Semipalatinsk did not know about the Gores.
They finally rolled out a 60-foot diameter steel sphere that's part of a containment vessel for a particle beam weapon to shoot down American surveillance satellites. Exactly what Price described.
The end game is this big review occurs. All operations-oriented testing from a contractor like SRI should stop. So in other words, CIA's decision was because of security concerns, they were going to cut out SRI and work with Pat directly. So they did so.
The CIA moved Pat Price to a farm in the outskirts of Washington. He was doing day-to-day spying for the CIA.
We've broken into some foreign embassies in foreign countries, and we bugged them. And we have the operational files. So what we did is we got Pat Price, and we brought one of the people who had made this entry into the room with Pat. So we gave him a photograph of the outside of the building. But the goal of those operational people was to find the code room of the embassy and basically bug it. So they needed to get in the embassy, find it, place a bug, and get out before the guards opened up the next morning. He supposedly located the physical place in the embassy that was the code room area. So, according to the operations guy, yeah, he found the place and they should use him again. He was inside the code room.
Sonic Cord, Terry Street, and that's it. So he's a wizard of Sonic Cord.
Hello, just dropping off Russell. Thank you.
Uri Geller knows a lot about code rooms. Uri says he spent a long time working for Mossad, so perhaps he knows what happened to Pat Price as well. If you can tell me, what was the meeting about? What were you doing in the secret room in the Capitol?
Okay, they actually...
You must have been briefing somebody.
Yes, actually there were 10, there are probably 2 or 3 shielded rooms, different levels, but it's actually in the Capitol dome, the shielded room. It is a room where no eavesdropping can take place because the walls are leaded, etc., all kinds of materials, even the plugs are different, and you know, it can also be a wine cellar. So while doing secret work,
that's fine,
you can drink wine and get drunk.
Okay, well, I wanted to, it's a shielded room with a perfect conversation.
Yes.
I want to talk to you about the death of Pat Price.
And Pat comes in with his description of an underwater sabotage training facility several kilometers away from the seacoast. And this information was passed on to the Libyan desk. They saw a facility, basically, where he said that they hadn't seen before, and a few days later, Pat Price died. This was the end of Pat Price.
CIA hired Price away from us, and 4 months after joining the CIA, Price was dead.
And the big question is, was he killed or was it a natural death?
Like in the movies, you want to know, did he jump or was he pushed?
What do you think?
The emergency department people said that there was an individual that came in with him with a briefcase that showed the attending physician in the emergency room his recent EKGs from Greenbrier, which was the facility that I knew that we'd taken him to get his cardiological workup some months ago, and basically said, look, here's the guy had rampant serious coronary artery disease. He had a heart attack, so even though he died unattended in a hotel room, they decided, they meaning the hospital and the police, to not make it a medical examiner case. So they didn't do an autopsy, although that's not correct. And the man disappeared with the briefcase, with the notes. They never took any records of it. Body was removed and cremated. And then they called his wife. Yeah, wow.
Price was known to have a heart condition and he may have had a heart attack.
That's it. Next.
The Russians may have killed him.
And the third.
My opinion
yes.
is the CIA discovered quickly they had a terrible problem.
After Price's death, it emerged that his church may have been attempting to blackmail the IRS using classified documents.
There's a file cabinet that's got a folder full of this stuff in it. This church had a problem with the government. He would go back to his church officials and immediately give them a debriefing of everything that he said and everything that I said. Here, the guy who was walking on water was a traitor.
I do not think he was a spy for his church.
You know, I was shocked and devastated because I had no idea about this.
If he walks into the president's office and reads a nuclear code, if it turns out that Superman is a double agent, what do you do?
If he didn't understand and misinterpreted what it was that he could tell his confessor in his church, I forgive him that. That's not Pat's fault.
Knowing intelligence, knowing what's happening around the world, and having worked for certain, agencies, I know a little more about this story.
That's exactly why I wanted to talk to you.
People who are so valuable are never taken out. They tempt them with amazing circumstantial or monies, dwellings, houses, to work for them. They will never. This is like killing the goose that lays golden eggs.
Devices which would have enabled the CIA